Welcome to the last day. So I have a few announcements, some very important announcements. First, let me thank especially those who have claimed the space during this Kopano, especially those who organized sessions during the self-organized sessions, time the whole afternoon on Tuesday, to bring the issues that you want to organize around to the agenda of the Kopano. We're very grateful. Some who lined that up quite a long time ago by asking for those to be put on the agenda, and others who spontaneously organized sessions while we were here. So we're very grateful for that. I need to let you know that we unfortunately have a few cases of COVID positive cases. So we're concerned about this, especially since yesterday. People who have tested positive are in quarantine at the hotels. We will take care of all their needs. We will accommodate those who are unable to travel back home for a quarantine period. And we want to ask everyone to double up on safety while we are together. So please, 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 sanitize, sanitize, sanitize. Wear your mask at all times. Please do not hug each other or shake hands. Please, please, please. And try to keep as much distance as you are able to from each other. We've consulted with the COVID specialists at the university and our own COVID safety officer. We would like everyone to be tested. And the way that we propose to do this is first for all those who are scheduled to travel internationally. Those who required the test to travel have already started being tested. Even if it is not required, we would like everyone to be tested. First those traveling internationally, and then those who are not traveling internationally, just so that we sequence it in an organized way. And we will do that. We'll try and cut the program a bit towards the end of the day. It cannot be done at the university. We will have to do it at the hotels. Later today we'll announce exactly where at the hotel. It's likely to be the Park Inn Hotel, and the information will be communicated there. The people who have tested positive are not seriously ill, and if there does develop a case of serious illness, we will do the necessary to take care of the people affected. So please be very, very careful. The strain of the virus seems to be spreading very, very rapidly. Please do not touch the microphones if you don't have to. And if you are passing on one of these roving mics, please sanitize before passing it on. So that's the unfortunate and somewhat expected situation. We will continue with the scheduled program, obviously understanding that those who do not feel safe should opt out. So please don't force yourself to be present if you feel unsafe. So it's the last day. Where are we in the flow of Kopano? That flow chart that you see up there described our process. Since yesterday and for the whole day today, we're in that reinvention curve. Yesterday we spoke about working um, on ourselves and working with each other. Today, the whole day is about working with others. So that's the overall framing for today. We'll start off with an introductory panel on the broad topic, very briefly, 30 minutes, on working with others. Then we will go into a session on working with policymakers, organized in collaboration with the Commonwealth Secretariat and with UNDP. For that session, we're very honored to have with us the Deputy Minister of Justice of South Africa, John Jeffrey, who's been a strong champion of our issues in the South African government and public at large. Welcome, Deputy Minister. We think that we will not have the tea break because we're running late, and go straight into the session that follows, which is on working with business. For that session, we will be joined, I don't know by how many, but a number of people from different parts of the world online. So it's going to be a little bit tricky. We'll try to manage it, but that's a session that's been made available globally to a number of partners that we've worked with since 2019, particularly with the Global Equality Fund. And then we have the afternoon sessions, which are meant to bring us into some kind of consolidation of all that's been discussed over the past few days. And this evening, everyone is welcome to join a celebration event where we will pay tribute to a few people whom, as a community or communities across our region, we want to honor and thank. So that is this evening at Kirstenbosch Gardens. So let me first check. Kopano, have I said all that you needed me to say? Yes? Thank you. Please welcome Nolwazi Tusini from Iranti and the panelists for this session.
I like to start these kinds of conversations by saying Sanbonani, because I'm Zulu and we take greeting very seriously. If you don't greet a Zulu person, they may not speak to you for a very long time. But also because of what it means, right? If you were to translate, to unpack what the Zulu greeting means, it says, I see you. And not just as you arrive in the space as a body, but I see you in your full humanity, with the histories that you bring with you, and the stories that you carry, and the lived experience that sits as formal knowledge in your body. And I think that that is important as a way to open up and anchor particular kinds of conversation. Now, our panel this morning has been given the task of putting into this space some thoughts and ideas that we are all then going to take through to the different and various discussions that we're going to be having today. And so this panel, unfortunately, will not be taking questions. We are here to offer some of our thoughts and ideas that we perhaps can then use as foundation or as the background for the conversations for the rest of the day. With that said, I'm not going to spend too much more time introducing myself because we do not have a lot of time, but I'm going to ask my panel to begin to introduce themselves to you, and let's start with you, Thabo.
Morning, everyone. My name is Thabo Buthelezi, originally from South Africa. I work with an organization called the Southern Africa Litigation Center. Thank you.
Samantha.
Good morning. My name is Samantha Samuels. I'm a board member of Business Plus and have been in the corporate sector for most of my working life.
Morning. My name is Yvonne from Botswana. I'm a journalist. I work for the BBC Africa. I'm also a pastor and a public speaker.
Good morning, bon dia. My name is Miguel Gomes Antonio. I work for an organization called Southern African Christian Initiative, in short, SACHI. We work across the SADC region. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to anchor our conversation in three big sort of questions and ideas. We spent a lot of time yesterday, in fact, the entire day, having a conversation about working with one another, and today's theme is working with others. But I think that as a panel, we wanted to spend a little bit of time at the beginning of our conversation to have a small reflection and thought process around working with one another within this movement. Because before we look externally for allies, I think that there are particular conversations that are unresolved but critical about how we can be allies for one another within this movement, according to our different identities and our different needs. And so that's where we will begin our conversation around the ways in which we are, or perhaps not, working with one another, and the ways in which we come into this space and occupy this space in ways that might be harmful to one another, as opposed for being ways that are, ways of allyship. If, for example, we are sitting in this space and our comrades who are not South African say that the South Africans who hold a particular kind of privilege are taking up too much space here, and the response that they get is that you cannot come to this country and expect us not to speak about our issues, right? What does that mean in terms of harm and the ways in which we are occupying this space for privilege? Because if we are to say that in this space there are people from our community that should be here, that we're bringing into the space, absolutely we must. But the ways in which we do it also matter. And do we hold ourselves to that allyship? When we speak about the other foundation as a big thing up in the air over there, which it probably is in the sector that holds a lot of power, but we also speak about it as if the other foundation is not also, at the same time, queer black bodies that are here in the space with us. And we communicate the things that we need in the space in such a way that queer black bodies are so distressed that they leave the plenary in tears. What does that mean for allyship and working together? Thabo.
I think the one thing that we've noticed throughout the week is that we have issues that go unresolved. The one thing I've noticed is that we are able to hold other people accountable. We are able to see that so-and-so is not doing their work. But then there's another aspect of accountability, holding ourselves as individuals accountable. So that would look like me asking myself, am I a good person to work with? Am I approachable? Do I listen to the person next to me? Not just for the sake of listening, but to actually hear them. And that is something that we should be doing as activists and broadly as human beings. And that is what I'm bringing to the space, to say, let us hold ourselves accountable. Let us hold each other accountable. Let us hear each other, even if we disagree, even if we don't see eye to eye, but let us understand what the end goal is.
I want to come to you, Yvonne. What are your thoughts on the ways in which we've been holding allyship in this space?
What really stood out for me is the song of kindness. Every person who came to this podium talked about kindness. But are we really kind? And where does it end? Do we take it to where we are going? I'm very passionate about social justice journalism. I believe that as journalists, we are very dangerous when we are ignorant. The pen is mightier than the sword. But I often say this, that with the same pen, we've destroyed so many lives. I wish journalists could hear me in this room. I've been doing this thing for 10 years plus. An ignorant journalist is very destructive. Because when you are ignorant, you don't know your purpose, you don't know your function. How many lives have been lost because of what we wrote? I think I came here specifically to talk to journalists because they are ignorant. I've been ignorant myself. You know, when LGBTQ plus persons complain about how they're treated by the media, we see that as playing a victim. No, let them own the narrative. If you don't understand your function, where purpose is not known, according to one of my favorite speakers, T.D. Jakes, abuse is inevitable. You will abuse, you know, you have a privilege of power as a journalist, influence. So with the same pen, with the same mic, with the same radio station, we have destroyed so many lives. We can do better as journalists. I'm talking to journalists, and I'm very much intentional today because we've been here. I was here even the last Kopano. I tried to look for articles. Most of the articles that were written by LGBTQ plus persons, not even journalists who are allies, but persons. And I'm like, okay, they're writing their own stories because we are not doing enough. When Botswana legalized homosexuality, I did a survey in our then newsroom. 22 people, what's your take? Let me tell you something that's gonna shock you. You know what I mean? Hate. So let's know that we have a function. Our power can be very destructive if you are ignorant as journalists. You hear me? Because I've been doing this thing a lot in Botswana, and even after quitting where I was working, I see newspapers, there are still elements of unprofessionalism. When someone comes to you and they don't even know the difference between a transgender and intersex person, that's why you're going to find an article, a front page, this man is a woman. You know? So we need to understand kindness also as a principle, as a media ethic. It's there. Let people own the narrative. Da?
So I'm hearing accountability, I'm hearing kindness, I'm hearing the power of words and the power of language, and the ways in which we choose to employ words and language as we work together. Samantha?
I think if we all do understand the end in mind. And if we come into a space of love, and we come into a space of understanding the journey, we would be able to really accept, and as you opened up, you said, Sanbonani, I see you. We need to really see each other, and we need to learn to respect one another. And once we do that, we would be able to listen, we'd be able to take the lessons, and we'd be able to share and actually implement in different countries. I was in one of the groups yesterday, and just beautiful stories being shared. And from Malawi and South Africans are saying, gee whiz, that's brilliant. We can actually implement it as well. But if you're coming into the space of saying, I understand the end in mind, I see you, I do it with love and I do it with kindness, it would really help the community.
Miguel, would you agree?
Yeah, I will agree based on our extensive work experience in SADC, working with the religious leaders on different programs, including LGBTQI. So we came to learn that one of the things that has been missing is that the synergy of how we can work together, because somehow we claim to be the victim and we blame the church that the church don't want us. But one of the things that we took out, religious leaders are just human beings like you and I. And not all religious leaders, faith leaders, have the same understanding or went through the same training. In different countries we work, for instance, let me take the example of Zimbabwe. I think there are colleagues from Zimbabwe here. In Zimbabwe, you have these 7 different councils of churches are grouped differently. You have the Council of Churches, you have the Evangelical Fellowship, you have the traditional African churches, the Zionists, you have the Charismatic, whereby Bishop Bismarck used to be the former Secretary General. When you talk to them, everyone has different perspective and understanding of the LGBTQI. Therefore, what we've been emphasizing is that sometime we have to find a common ground where we can create a proper strategy how to approach the church leaders to understand. And if you don't understand, possibly one of the strategies is capacity building, to capacitate them. Because the same way you talk to a born-again pastor is not the same way you talk to a Catholic priest, because the training is not the same. So such partnership or alliance is very, very important. And also, one of the things that I think there is a delegate from Malawi who spoke about the public arena. We have a program in Seychelles which falls under democracy and governance. For some of you who have been in the country where there were elections, we did deploy LGBTI in elections and always been encouraging them, please, if you feel that you want to be in the public sector, do so. In Botswana, we did the same, and someone mentioned about the person who wanted to do so, but then there was no support from the ground. Sashi did that, and we continue to do that. And please, we are ready to work with you.
Okay. So there are a number of things that you've brought into the space, Miguel. The reason why I asked about allyship within the queer community first is because I think that it's important for the queer community to define for allies what kind of allyship that we want and we need, right? And I think, you know, the ideas that are coming from this side around the accountability, the kindness, the seeing one another, the being mindful of our words are important. But I think as it relates to the church and with the media, I do not know that it is a helpful conversation to not own the harm that the church has done to the LGBTIQ community on this continent, and to make it seem as though there is a level of unfairness in the ways in which this community then begins to interact with the church from a place of distrust. It is rooted in harm, right? And it's the same thing when Yvonne says that the media has done harm in particular kinds of ways, that means that we can begin the conversation from a place of atonement that recognizes that. And I think that is important for us to unpack. And I want to bring you here, Samantha, because there's been a conversation happening throughout this week around a version of economic justice, around how queer bodies are left out of the sector that you've spent your entire career in, and that those that are able to get in experience particular kinds of harm and violence when they're in that sector. And yet, you are now here to represent that sector and encourage queer people to be trusting enough to talk about allyship with a space and a sector and a grouping of people and institutions that are inherently harmful. Why would we do that?
We need to find the allies within corporates, within business sector. And an important thing you speak about from an economic perspective, how do we include the LGBTI community? Corporates follow the BE Charter, Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Charter, which has designated groups of women, of rural, of veterans, of youth, disability, but does not include the LGBTI community. We need to ensure that we find those allies, we find the platforms, that the privileged platforms, to be able to take our struggle forward and to be included in the deputy minister is over here. We need to find the Minister of Department of Trade and Industry and Justice and all of those to be including it into the legislation and actually making it real, and bringing in the LGBTI community in the supply chain and making it real from an economic perspective. Finding those safe spaces to be able to have these conversations. We need to push the envelope when it comes to corporates. We need to be talking about, you know, what does it mean in terms of the South African Workplace Equity Index. Pushing corporates to be participating in that and ensuring that they do make changes in terms of policies and their practices in the workplace, and discrimination around the LGBTI community is no longer.
Thabo, Samantha is saying that we must find allies in business. Yvonne came here quite honestly and said media are mostly ignorant and uncaring. Miguel says that the church is here to be in allyship and work in partnership with the LGBTIQ community. What commitments do you think should be made by these quote-unquote allies to the community in order to make real the conversation that we're having about allyship? What do you think are the things that must be committed to by allies to the queer community in order for those kinds of partnerships to even stand a chance?
Firstly, there needs to be a commitment to attaining equal rights for everyone. Oppression comes in many forms, and within the LGBTI community, there are people who are marginalized, even way more than others. And I will make an example about a trans black woman. When they enter the business space, they might face different barriers from a white trans woman. And that is something that we need to acknowledge, that even within the LGBTI community, race is an issue. Gender is an issue. And in terms of the broad-based human rights approach, how do we then deal with these human rights violations? How do we then commit to saying, as allies, we are here, we understand your story, we understand your pain. We might not be living through those same lived experiences, but we hear you. And there comes a point of, and we've been saying this throughout the past week, inclusivity and diversity. And not just of persons, of ideas, of thoughts, of strategies, but most importantly, of voices.
Yvonne?
I think there is an urgent need for more and more dialogues around the LGBTQ+. We need to involve parents. I'm very happy to see parents here because sometimes we take them for granted, but a lot of them go through a lot. We need to hear the stories, we need to encourage them, and they also need to partner even at a Pan-African level. Let a parent from here, South Africa, partner with a parent from Malawi, Uganda, just so they can share it, even form coalitions together, Also, there is a need for more trainings. I'm advocating for journalists now, capacity building. They need to be trained on ethics because how you report on politics differs from how you report on LGBTQ+ issues. You don't just write because you want to sensationalize. You are dealing with, the marginalized, sensitive lives here. And also just, once again, kindness, let's expand more on kindness. Unless you understand and have a revelation of what kindness means, you will not, you won't go any further. And action, let's not just talk, let's act in implementation. Thank you.
What does the implementation look like though, Yvonne? From the media perspective, what kinds of commitments are supposed to be coming from your sector and your industry, right?
Yeah.
That are to give people a feeling of not safety, because we can't get there that quickly, but an idea that you are committed to the cause and to undoing and repairing the harm.
Yeah, good. I think first of all we have to deal with the perception that what I see in most newsrooms, that LGBTQ+ issues are not very significant. If at all they are significant, there has to be something sensational. We have to get rid of this mindset. Trainings, I know Lehabibo and Rainbow Identity in Botswana, they're doing quite a lot to accommodate journalists, but one thing that I can also advise them on, they should go to the editors because, I mean, for buy-in, they make the final decisions, which story goes. I used to knock off around 12 midnight just to ensure that a headline is not sensationalized, you know, to ensure that tomorrow I don't receive a call from Lega people to say, Yvonne, what is this? Because it always comes to me, you know, like I'm the one who destroyed this life. So let's also, as the media, ensure that we come together, you know, for one common goal. Let's advocate for the rights of LGBTQ+. Let's empower one another. Those of us that are here, let's go back and share what we have learned with others. And I think it makes sense for us to just expand the wisdom to others and even to our editors. Let's ensure that the damage is minimized or hopefully cancelled altogether.
Yeah. Miguel, what kind of commitments do you think can come and should come from your sector?
Yeah, from my sector, I think the greatest commitment should come from the churches is the engagement, continuous engagement between the church and the LGBTQI people. Let me take the example of Namibia. I will not mention the church and the pastor and the LGBTQI who suffered in the church. There was a time, I think it was some 4 or 5 years ago, Linda Bauman, she's here and she knows what I'll be talking about, but I'm just giving an example. There was this LGBT guy, very, very prominent in the church. And when the pastor or the apostle or the prophet found out that it was an LGBTI, he was exposed in the entire congregation. At the time, I think Sashi was approached how to deal with the situation. So this prophet or apostle is a good friend of mine. I went to him, Papa, what exactly is happening in the church? That no, Sodom and Gomorrah and so on. So we had to go and explain. So my approach, myself being a former Franciscan Capuchin, I had to explain kind of like to re-educate this prophet. And what happened, he said, I'm sorry, but how will I apologize? I said, whether you apologize or make public statement will not help integrate the person in the church. The person did not come to your church to impose and to change the church. He just came to join. And it's part of the creation, because if you want to change the person, you must change creation. And if you want to change creation, you must change God. And I said, no, I'm very, very sorry. So when he preached, I think in one of the Sundays, we were there, I went with my wife. And when the sound, when he started to explain in that church Sunday, there was more than 30 LGBTQI, including his own firstborn son. Wow. So those are some of the things that we need to understand, that the engagement is needed between LGBTQI and the churches. Because one of the things also we picked up is the fear. Fear always kills that element, because we have the first self-defeat that no, if I approach or if I tell the pastor about ABCD, I'll be already thrown. No, you don't need to fear. Confront. Create a trust. That's what we've been doing. The second example that I can take, I'll take it from Zambia, Southern Province. For those who are from Zambia will know, the Barosland, Western Province, and Southern Province, Livingstone, which predominantly Tongas and Lozis, and that has to do a lot of tradition. And there is the predominant church, which is the Seventh-day Adventist. So we put the Caprivi strip, for those who knows Namibia, together with Zambia because culturally we are the same. And one of the pastors said that no, this LGBT in our church does not exist. So when we had the first, the second, the third meeting, only to find out even his junior pastor or the second pastor in church, the elder, is an LGBTI person. So they wanted to fire them because, don't forget, in the church, the first thing when they found that you're an LGBTI is to push you out. And if you're from the Catholic Church or the Anglican, excommunication. But excommunication, that is a long process. And that we came and we approached our LGBTI community in different countries, how to assist the LGBTI community inside the church. These people are suffering a lot. We just had the LGBTI engagement in Namibia, in Novemberland. I think Ecclesia is not here. The IM came to facilitate that dialogue. It was kind of like a heated debate, but later on when he said, oh, we are sorry, but we are not told about this. Then we said, but can Sachi together with IM have this discussion again? And we are going to have that discussion with the church. Please, let's not fear, because these church leaders are not properly trained. Some of them are about the Holy Spirit, the Bible says, but they do not go and have a proper biblical training.
Samantha, what commitments do you think should come out of the business sector?
For no discrimination in terms of the LGBTI community, more inclusion in terms of big discussions within corporate, inclusion into the supply chain and commitment around that, big portions of the procurement budgets to be spent within the LGBTI community, and ensuring that our allies really use those platforms to be changing legislation, to be including from an employment perspective as well.
We are unfortunately out of time, but I just want us to have one quick sort of round around some of the opportunities that might exist in a place of allyship, but also I think what is quite important is for us to also discuss what the dangers are for this community to go into allyship with the media, with religious entities, with business, and to look at whether or not those dangers can at all be mitigated. And so perhaps let me start with you, Miguel, around what are the opportunities, why should the queer community go into allyship? Actually, I'm using the wrong language. Why should the queer community allow the church to be an ally for us? I think is better languaging.
Well, as I said earlier, that both the queer and the church leader or the religious leader are part of creation. And if you look to the history, humanity, the church possibly is the first public organized institution in human history. For over 2,000 years, the church already existed. And religious leaders are part of the creation. The queer people are part of the creations, are all God created. So there has to be that alliance, because one of the things that the churches need, church, we call it the mother church. It's not the father church. That's very, 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 I think we are still debating that what and so on. That alliance between the church and LGBTI family is so important that we'll encourage and will make the church to understand that what has been done 2,000 years ago is no longer the same. Because I myself, being a Catholic, I would doubt if Jesus was still alive today or living with us on earth, would have acted the way as church leaders would act, demonizing our fellow human beings.
Yvonne?
There is the judiciary, executive, and legislature, and then the fourth estate, being the media. So this shows that the media has got power. So let us use our power to advocate for the rise of LGBT plus community. Let's interrogate the church. You know, there is a lot of hypocrisy in the church. Yesterday somebody spoke and said the church has really chased them away from the building, even from God. I know what they mean. So the same Bible, they're using it to fight themselves, the church. That's why there are denominations. You know, the Catholic, the Seventh-day, the Zion. So we need to interrogate this and also expose them. Because in as much as they think they're shaming and demonizing LGBT, what is Sodom and Gomorrah? For argument's sake, if at all gays are, in quotes, demonic or wicked, was it only gays mentioned at Sodom and Gomorrah? But because our society is so myopic in their wickedness, they're going to focus on one category of people and say, gays and lesbians were not, when you talk Sodom and Gomorrah. So we need to unpack Sodom and Gomorrah afresh, the church, to you. So the media has got this job to do. We also have to raise awareness. We have to teach even those that are in power, policy makers. Let's challenge them. Let's not just look at LGBTQ plus persons as, you know, instruments of entertainment. You know, there are people who just want to be around gays to laugh. You know, like there are tools to laugh. You know, she's funny. This is a human being who has got a soul. Hear the story. This is a mother who lost a son because of depression. You know, hear the story and document them. We are very, very influential, so we should use our power to advocate for those that don't have a voice.
We need to challenge corporates to occupy more of these spaces, these forums. We need HR directors to be part of these discussions. We need chairpersons or members of the Social and Ethics Committee to be present here. We need transformation managers and diversity and inclusion managers within corporates to be part of these conversations, to come to the table, to listen, to learn, and to really move and be part of change.
From an organizational standpoint, we need to allow allyship so that we may share knowledge and resources. There are instances, and I'm not going to talk for each country's context because I don't know that, but there are instances where advocacy would open certain doors that strategic litigation wouldn't. There are times when both of those would be redundant, but legal empowerment would work. And I do not think that most of our organizations, especially ones that are still coming up, have the resources to do strategic litigation, have the resources to do proper advocacy. But now, if you ally with someone, with an organization that could assist in that, that moves us forward. And we call ourselves a movement, which means there needs to be progress. There needs for us to continue moving forward. One step at a time, 2 steps at a time, it does not matter. If we now come together and work together, then there is that promise of movement.
Okay. So that's it from us. I hope that some of the thoughts that have been shared will help to inform some of the conversations that are going to come out of this space. I think for myself, as a queer person within this space, I approach allyship with a deep, deep sense of distrust. I think that part of the reason is the violence, some of it which has happened in the languaging, even on this panel, and that we need to think quite carefully about who it is that we choose as allies, and to hold our allies accountable to frameworks and ideas that come from this community, as opposed to having them come into a space and act as though it's a partnership. I don't think that it's a partnership. But I think that as a queer community, we also do need to have a conversation about what true allyship looks like, so that we can ensure that we put the strategies in place to ensure that that is what we get from those relationships. And with that, I would like to thank you, Miguel Antonio, Yvonne, Samantha, Thabo. Thank you so much for the privilege of your time, and thank you for taking some time to listen to us.